Good morning and welcome to the Personal Safety Forum. We are so glad you're in attendance today. We have some great presentations from 3 speakers on tips for protecting you and your family. I encourage you to take notes to share the tips from each presentation with your friends and family. After each presentation, you will have the opportunity to ask questions. If you have any questions, you are free to ask them by writing in the chat, or you can raise your hand. Without further ado, let's get started with our first presentation.
Police Officer George Musini is a highly decorated 25-year veteran of the Baltimore County Police Department. Officer Musini is a national and state certified police instructor on numerous safety and wellness topics. As a father, police officer, and college instructor, he loves to share his knowledge and experiences with the community to enhance their safety while building strong community relationships. Officer George Musini.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Derrick, for the intro. So we're going to get right into the meat and potatoes of the presentation. If we can throw up the first slide, I want to let you know why I'm here. You'll learn a little bit more about me as we go along, but this presentation is not about me. It's about making you and your family feel safer. So you just pull that up, and good morning to everybody. I'm also going to pop up the chat feature in case anybody has any questions as we go along here. Just getting our view set up, and then we'll roll ahead. While we're adjusting your view, if you can see the screen, I want you to think about what might be going on in this picture. If you cannot see the picture because you're just listening in via audio or you're driving, obviously we don't want you staring at a screen, so safety is first. But there is a man peering into the window of a residence and not quite sure what's going on. So I want you to think to yourself, if you walked up on this situation or you saw this going on, what do you think is happening and what would you do? I will forewarn everybody, I like these presentations to be interactive. Normally, I would love to be at your facility. We'd all be together working, through these presentations. So any kind of participation, questions, interaction is highly encouraged. All right, so I'm just going to get started because I want to make sure that the next presenter, who is even better than me, has ample time to get going through. So in this first picture, what you're seeing is somebody looking in that window of the house, peering in, maybe to see if it's vacant, maybe to see what they can see from the outside, what's exposed to the public. This is actually one of our police officers. That's Officer Brian Deach. And I took this picture while we were doing a home security and safety assessment. The Baltimore County Police Department offers home security surveys for free. And basically what we would do is set up an appointment with you. If you were interested, you'd call us up, and I'm going to give you all the contact information at the conclusion of my presentation to come out to your residence or your business and do a walkthrough. And basically what we'll do is we'll find out any potential vulnerabilities that your property might have, anything you might tighten up, or even reinforce some of the good stuff that you already have in place. So I do want you to let everybody here know that if you're a Baltimore County resident, this service is provided free to you, courtesy of the Baltimore County Police Department. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. I just want to, Derrick gave me a good introduction, but I just want you to see what I look like in uniform and just give you a little bit of credibility of where your information is coming from. Like Derrick said, I'm a 25-year Baltimore County police officer. Before that, I was a firefighter on Long Island, so you might pick up a little accent from New York. But other than that, I am dedicated, passionate, and actually super privileged and honored that I was invited back because Dr. Denyce, she, the first time I presented for her, she had no idea what I was going to really talk about. I mean, she said, "Hey, can you put a safety presentation together?" I was like, "Yeah." But if she saw me the first time, she liked me, invited me back. That's a true honor. So thank you all for being here this morning. Enough about me. We'll just move on to the next slide. So I have to make a little disclaimer because when we talk about safety and security, we would all love to have the absolute bulletproof Fort Knox type security, whether it be at home or our residents, our business, or our surroundings. Unfortunately, there is nothing that is 100% foolproof. Every time we make something foolproof, a bigger fool comes along, or a bigger, better fool comes along and finds a way to come around the system. You know, at first people used to get your money by robbing you. Now they know how to create cyber attacks. But the goal of today's presentation is to make you a hard target, make it hard for people to take advantage of you, your property, your belongings, and your personal safety. There was a question in the chat about, does the Baltimore City Police Department offer the same service to inspect your home and safety? I would hope so. They have community outreach divisions. I do know, obviously, we all know that their staffing is super short, but that is a service that you should be able to take advantage of through Baltimore City. So definitely make a call. If for some reason Baltimore City does not, feel free to reach out to me and we will see how we can work together and we'll get you in the right place. All right, so as far as that disclaimer goes, I am going to also forewarn you, I like to use a little bit of humor. So if I say something that sounds funny, feel free to laugh. You know, safety and security shouldn't have to be a super serious conversation. We'll move on. Weapons. How do I protect myself? Should I get a gun? Should I carry a knife? What about tasers? What about pepper spray? Officer Musini, what would you do if I had one of these things? Well, I will say this. A lot of times when we respond to a scene of a victim of a shooting, stabbing, or, you know, accidental discharge from an electronic conductive device like a taser or something, unfortunately, it's usually the person that brought it to the fight because the person carrying it is usually not trained well enough. And handguns is a very deep topic. It's debated all over the country. Should you carry? Should you not carry? Should it just be for the police? Do I have the right as a business owner or a citizen just to protect myself? Yeah, you always have the right to protect yourself, but how you do it is very important. So I definitely recommend self-defense courses. I definitely recommend being aware of your surroundings. We're going to go into that a little bit deeper, but today's presentation is not about weapons. Today's presentation is about your personal and home safety without weapons, because I'm not in sales. I'm not here to train you on how to use a firearm. Now, if you're interested in learning some different aspects, I will tell you this. The Baltimore County Police Department offers a Citizens Police Academy. We run it 2 times a year. It is 9 weeks long. It meets on Wednesday evenings, and the location would vary either at the community college campus of Dundalk, or sometimes we host the classes on site at our special operations units like the Marine unit, aviation unit. So there's a little bit of travel involved, but an incredibly worthwhile experience if you ever wanted to know what goes on behind the scenes, why police do what they do, why they don't do what they don't do, etc. So let's move on to home security, how you can make your house a little bit safer and tighter. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you some examples of good things and bad things. So if you can take a look at this screen once again, if you're driving and you can't see, I'll describe the picture for you. It is a door on a white house. It has 3 single pane windows that do not appear to be very thick, or, you know, they're not blocked by any kind of metal screen or anything else. There is a doorknob just below the bottom window, which if somebody were to punch out that bottom window, they could easily reach in, unlock the door, and have their way right into that house. So what we want to show you here today is the good and the bad. So if you're looking at the picture on the right side where you see a doorknob with a key lock in it, but there's no deadbolt. So you don't need to unlock 2 items or devices to get into this house. You only need to unlock 1. And you would turn a key and get right into that house. Unfortunately, this is not the best situation. You do not want to allow a criminal an opportunity to break through that window and unlock and have their free way into the house. That glass is not thick. It's not tempered. It's the old school non-insulated single pane glass. So that's just something to look at. These locks are easily defeatable. We recommend that every door have a deadbolt. And when you buy a deadbolt for your door or have it installed, or if maybe it's time to upgrade the house or whatever. Once again, I'm not in sales, so I'm not going to tell you what brand to buy. I'm not going to tell you, you need the super deluxe model of anything. To reduce your chances of being a victim, all you have to do is throw a couple hindrances in front of the would-be offender. Offenders, thieves are generally lazy by nature, and they want easy targets. They want sitting ducks. They want people that put stuff on a platter for them. They want your pocketbook in your car while it's unlocked. They want to get whatever in your garage while it's left open during the day. They want to walk in through open doors. They want to distract you when you're in the front yard and send someone in through the back door. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make it difficult. So they say, you know what? I don't want to do my business at this house. They're too alert. They're too aware. And there's too many layers to get past them. Now, I'm not saying you have to fortify your house like Fort Knox or your apartment or whatever else. You just want to make it difficult for them to have unauthorized access to your home. So let me ask you this. And if anybody is not afraid to come off of mute, how many of you have a door where you only need one key and only have to unlock one lock at your place? You can put it in the chat or you can come off mute.
Does a electronic keypad count as one? Like,
Yeah, if that's your only lock, yeah.
Mhm.
Now, so your knob doesn't, the knob below the electronic lock does not have a lock in it?
No, it has a lock.
Okay, good. And is it a key lock? Like obviously like in the knob?
I think so. Yes. I think it's either if it's not in the bottom, it might be on the top. I can't remember off the top of my head, but you have to lock both locks.
Okay.
To unlock both locks in order to get in the house. Yes.
Good deal. And can I ask, do you have a video camera by your door?
I do have one that I could put up next to the door, but it's not like right at the door. It's like kind of looking into the yard. We have like a big front yard.
That's fine. That's good because criminals like to do pre-surveillance when they're casing a neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know how many cameras are around. They want to know how many people are going to report them as suspicious. Most criminals won't commit an illegal act the first time through. They want to go hang out in a neighborhood and see if actually people will call the police to say, hey, there's somebody that just doesn't fit the vibe of the neighborhood. I don't recognize the car. They're just hanging around, sitting in a car, way too long. They're not just checking a message or now it does get a little tough these days because once somebody gets on TikTok, it's a little bit of a rabbit hole. They might sit there for 3 hours, but
right.
they're looking around trying to catch a vibe of what's going on and who's watching. Derrick actually mentioned in the chat that he has two and a screen door. In the picture that I'm showing you in here on the left side, you can see there's actually a storm door and it's propped open. I think we did that part for example purposes so that we could show you the door with only the single lock on it. But we highly recommend that if you have a screen door, storm door, even if it's just a screen door, even if you lock that, that is just an extra layer. Imagine it taking them an extra 10 seconds to have to get through that screen door before they can get to the other door. And if it's locked, any kind of stumbling marks we can put there or stumbling points we want in there. And I would like to welcome Felix's S22 Ultra to the meeting. Welcome, Felix. All right, let's move on to the next slide. We're going to talk briefly about lighting. Obviously, electric rates are high, and a lot of people like to save money. I've worked in Dundalk and Essex. I did 13 and a half years in Essex, 6.5 years in Dundalk, and another 6.5 years at headquarters. And I used to have to carry light bulbs with me because I'd go into certain communities and they would have every light cut off, or grandma or grandpa went around and unscrewed all the bulbs. So we'd try to do an investigation and have a conversation with somebody in the house, and there was not a light bulb to be found. Lighting is your friend. Okay, let me repeat that. Lighting is your friend. I live in between two communities. One is older and one is about 20 years old. And the older community has some older residents in there, and you can drive through at night and probably 1 out of 83 houses in the neighborhood has a light on. It is scary, it is dark, and it is a criminal's dreamland. Criminals do not want to be identified. Why do people wear masks and hoods, right? Think about the stereotypical picture of a bank robber, right? Usually a mask or something over their face, anything to obscure their profile is what they're going to do. Lighting helps expose that. Now, in this picture, I want you to pay attention. For those that, once again, I'm going to describe pictures for those that can't see the screen. There's a motion sensor mounted up under the awning of a home, and the motion sensor is actually blocked by a rain gutter, okay, which makes that motion sensor way less effective than it should be had it been mounted in a place that wasn't obstructed by another object. So that rain gutter, that rain spout, is actually limiting what that motion sensor can detect, which means that somebody could probably get too close to that house before it triggers and turns on. The next problem with this lighting setup that we have here is you see it's a spiral bulb, and that's a compact fluorescent bulb. Compact fluorescent bulbs, especially in cold weather, take a very long time to warm up and produce the light you need to identify somebody. So if a criminal were to walk onto this property, trigger that light, it would be seconds to minutes before it could come on. Those seconds and minutes either give them time to operate or to say, maybe I should do my work somewhere else. Now, I am 50-50. I'm a 50-50 fan on motion lights. I'm a fan for motion lights when we're tracking people with the helicopter, because when somebody is running through yards, especially in a row house community, a lot of times they will trigger the lights, and we can, in the helicopter, we can see a lighting path light up as the criminal is trying to get away from us. And in that essence, it's good. But imagine a light being on, acting almost as like a force field around your home, okay? The better the lighting, the less likely somebody is going to enter that force field, because they don't want to be seen. And sometimes you can control your lighting and sometimes you can't. So I want you to think about the next time you go to a store, a concert venue, a restaurant, you're out and about and you have to park in a public place. Choose a parking spot that is very well lit. Once again, if a criminal is going to set up to rob you or steal something from you or go after your car, they're going after the cars in the darker section of the lot where there's most likely not good video surveillance, or if there was video surveillance, it would be ineffective for identification purposes. I just want you to remember, write this down. Light is your friend. Once again, not in sales, but LED light bulbs make it very easy to leave a light on and you don't really have to worry about it. They work on pennies a day versus the incandescent bulbs. Matter of fact, I went to my daughter's college house last night and I pulled the grandpa move myself. I went and unscrewed every single incandescent bulb, and I went in there with a 12 pack that I bought from a local store and started popping them bad boys in, you know, 7 watts, 3 watts to produce the equivalent of 60 or 120 watts. That's your friend. I'm not trying to make you lose money here, but it's definitely a worthwhile investment. And those LED bulbs will last you forever. They are amazing. All right, I'm going to move on and I'm going to talk to you about a little acronym. We call it CPTED, and what it stands for is Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. Crime prevention through environmental design is basically a way to define your property, to set boundaries. Just like a relationship, people need to know where they can go and where they can't go with you. Your property needs to be defined the same. You want people to know what's yours and what's not. On the left side of this frame, you see a very high-end, modern-looking house. It's got a raised high cement wall, but it's level with the ground. Somebody walking past this house would say, to enter this property, I have to scale this wall or walk up this driveway. But you'll notice that the driveway, the garage, the trees, the landscaping is very well lit. It's got uplighting. It's got enough to say, this is my land, this is my property, and it's well lit. If you come on, you will be seen, you know, it's very clear. On the picture on the right is a typical home that you would see in Baltimore County. It's got vinyl siding, it's got windows, it's a level yard. And if somebody to walk past this property, they're going to notice that the owner of the home has installed a white vinyl picket fence And at the moment, if you're looking at the picture, you'll notice that the gate is open. That's okay, because that white vinyl fence makes a very clear delineation of what public property is with the sidewalk where they can be walking through, versus if you're on the other side of the fence, now you're clearly on my property and you're trespassing unless you were welcomed or you're delivering something that I asked for, right? So we're not going to charge Amazon and USPS for trespassing when we've asked them to come onto our property. But making your property, one, defined, keeping and maintaining your property is huge. You'll notice in both of these pictures that there are no newspapers laying on the ground. There's not tall weeds and signs of neglect. Now me, not only am I a law enforcement officer, I also double as a lawn enforcement officer. I like nice lawns. And if my neighbor has a lot of weeds, I'll let him know. I would say this property could use some edging, but you're not here for landscaping 101, right? So, but a well-maintained property, a property that's clean, free from trash, free from tall grass and weeds, free from objects just being laying around, strewn around, whereas if nobody's maintaining the property, is an invitation to a would-be criminal saying, the owner of this property doesn't really care. Now, we call this the broken windows theory, is that if something is not well maintained, other people will feel that they have the right to continue the course of throwing trash out the window there, or becoming a rogue and vagabond subject who would walk onto that property and possibly even try and take over your home because they don't think anybody's caring about it. We have several incidents every year where squatters will occupy a residence that's not theirs. And then we have to go through this whole process of getting them out. They don't acknowledge law enforcement. It's a whole mess. So you want to make sure that your property always looks like it's owned, it's maintained and cared about. Another great thing is signage. Now, in neither of these pictures do you see any signage, but if there was a sign, let's say you're near a high school, we get a lot of complaints from residences that are near high schools and middle schools that when the kids let out, they're throwing trash on their property, they're cutting across the grass, they're doing things, they're stepping into areas where they're not welcome or treating the property in ways that they shouldn't as good citizens. Signage, and you don't want to make your house look like a 7-Eleven. You don't want to have all these, no loitering signs and whatever else, but alarm company signs are highly effective in deterring would-be criminals. So if either one of these properties had a sign that said protected by ABC Alarm Company or, Acme Alarm Company, whatever it is, that's going to make a would-be criminal think twice. And that's what you want. And you want them to think twice. Security alarms, fencing, lighting, landscaping, access controls. So access controls would be, Andre, what are you showing me there? You showing me a security system? Maybe a modem? No idea. Maybe Andre's looking at an air fryer. Who knows? So we'll move on from Septet. I want to show you some examples of what we call natural surveillance. Okay, natural surveillance might sound a little creepy or spyish to you. It's not. It's very simple. When we as law enforcement officers drive through neighborhoods, we are looking and scanning for any possible vulnerabilities or anything on a property that wouldn't look right. On the picture on the left, you see a typical home, once again, here in Baltimore County, and there's very large bushes obstructing the view of the porch of this residence, which means that if somebody was up on that porch trying to pry a window open or steal a package or something, as we're driving through or you're approaching your own house, you would not be able to see if somebody was hiding behind those bushes, lurking to attack or whatever else. So when we went out to do a home security assessment, we suggested that they either reduce the amount of bushes blocking the view or do something else. Now, the resident took this one level up and they removed all of the bushes and replaced it with new landscaping, some smaller bushes that make it very easy for us to see the property. Spiky bushes are also your friend. So a rose bush, a baybriar bush, something that somebody would not want to, like a criminal is usually going to try and climb into a window, right? So if you put a rose bush underneath a window, do you think a criminal is going to want to mess with that rose bush? No, I don't even want to mess with it when I'm trimming them, right? So anything with spiking, we have different types of plants and stuff that you can look up. Like you can actually do a Google search and see what type of plants are best for security purposes. Cool thing about rose bushes or anything with thorns or spikes on them is that if somebody were to commit a crime, it's most likely going to grab a fiber, cut their skin, or do something that'll leave some evidence behind for us. So it's small things that we can do and that you can do to help us look in. On the not so natural side of things, liquor stores, convenience stores, and the alike, if they have so many posters blocking the view from the outside, that's bad for them. Because when we're driving through a neighborhood or past a 7-Eleven or convenience store, we are trying to see if there's any anomalies. Is the clerk not behind the counter? Is somebody holding a gun up to another customer there? If we can't see in and you can't see in, maybe that's a place you want to avoid. You want to go into places that are well lit and you get a good preview of what you're walking into so you don't wind up being a would-be, could-be victim. All right. Let's move on to the next slide. The next slide is going to show you about cameras. Now, a lot of people have camera systems, and when they call 911 to report either a suspicious situation or maybe unfortunately a crime that occurred on their property or near their property, we'll ask, do you have a camera? And some people will say yes. The important things about cameras are, can your information from that camera be shared? Is it visible? Is it clear enough to identify somebody? And this is where lighting goes hand in hand. Is the image bright enough? Have you ever driven through a area and noticed that there's, and if you haven't noticed this, you're going to start looking at this and be like, oh, that's what Officer Musini was talking about. There's what we call amber lighting, and it's like this yellowish tinge to the light. Amber lighting is no good. It can take a red sweatshirt or shirt and make it look brown. It is very bad for color matching and identification purposes. Bright white light is the right light. That's what you want in these areas. Or you can use warm lighting too. Warm lighting is great. I hate the daylight look that's like so bright it looks blue. That's terrible for any kind of cosmetic purposes whatsoever. But these cameras, you'll notice that there's several different types. There's there's like a smartphone accessible app that looks like it has some really high resolution in the right corner. On the left side, there's some very obvious looking Canon style cameras with the rain guard on top. Those are also good because they're very conspicuous. Once again, criminals are going to look for different security things. By the way, we're talking about break-ins and stuff like that, and I think this happened on my last presentation, but I actually have a cat burglar here that I'll... All right. Anyway, my cat walked into the room and started meowing, so I had to explain that so you didn't think that I had some kind of voice problem or tickle in my throat. He loves to come in whenever I'm on camera. But yeah, so with your cameras, here are the keys. 1, make sure that the lenses are clean. Make sure that the views are unobstructed, just like with that motion light where it was being obstructed by the rain gutter. Plants grow. So if you have plants on your porch or whatever, as a matter of fact, the other day we had a situation in my neighborhood where a guy came flying into the neighborhood. It was 25-mile-an-hour speed zone. He came in at like 55. All the Facebook cops came out. Oh, this guy's racing through the neighborhood. Who is it? Whose house is he going to? And the neighbor who had the best view of the street and where this other person was being dropped off at had a plant blocking their Ring camera because of this beautiful plant, but it was blocking what was there. You want to make sure that your cameras are unobstructed. You want to make sure they're clean. You want to make sure that the storage time on those cameras are nothing less than 72 hours. You need, because let's say this crime happens on Thursday evening or Friday night, and you don't realize this crime has occurred until Monday morning or the next day. You want to be able to go back and look, but you also want to give investigators enough time to get out to your location and retrieve that video from you. So if you can set your storage or recording retention at least 30 days, that's a minimum. The true minimum is 72 hours, but 72 hours is putting you at risk of losing valuable information that we can use to share. The Baltimore County Police Department, for those of you that live in the county, has an incredibly high success rate and closure rate for criminal cases. We are way above the national average. We close and clear over 82% of our cases, where the national average is sometimes down below 20%. But we're only successful at finding criminals because of the level of cooperation we have with the community. If the community doesn't share information with us via camera, social media, phone calls, tips, we become ineffective. And you can see in nearby jurisdictions, when the community doesn't connect with the police, we can't do our jobs and you can't be safe. We need to work with each other. This is essential for us. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. And I'm just going to touch back on outer perimeter illumination that I alluded to earlier. In the left picture is a nice dream home, honestly. I would love to live in a house like that. It's got some great uplighting. It makes the house very visible. It looks as if you were to approach that house, there's some good lighting there. On the bottom center picture is another example of where landscaping is completely obscuring this house. A criminal could have an absolute field day behind these bushes, take as much time as they want, breaking into a house or setting up in those bushes, waiting for a would-be victim to come walking up to the residence. Now, remember I said there were things that you can control and some things you can't control as far as your environment? On the upper right-hand portion of the slide is a picture of a street here in Baltimore County, and there is a street light there. And this street light was placed probably when the two trees on both sides of that lamp were much smaller. And what happens is the foliage starts to encompass the street lamp, and it then becomes obtrusive to the light. We want light because we want to be able to see what's around us. We want to see who's there, what's not there. We want to be safe. Remember, lighting is our friend. So in this case, if you are in an area where you have several street lights out, or even just one, that's all you need, is just one. What I want you to do is take a look at the top of the pole and see if you can see a yellow band with black numbers on there. If you see a yellow band with black numbers, that means that that pole is owned and maintained by Baltimore Gas and Electric or Constellation Energy, whatever their name is this week. So you can actually call BGE and report to them that the street light is out. I know there's another show going on there. We see it. But in this case, you can contact BGE and report the pole number. Now, if the number at the top of the pole is too hard for you to see with your bare eyes, just take out your cell phone, take a picture, zoom in on it, you'll get the pole number, and you report it to BGE. And how many of you here are Ravens fans? Any Ravens fans here? Really weird question for a crime prevention topic, right? Let me see. Nobody else is a Ravens fan. That's good. Either am I. Just kidding. So have you driven through Maryland recently? Have you seen these purple street lamps? That is not Purple Pride. And I'm sorry, DLWC, what was your name again? Give me your name again.
Bernice.
Charnice. All right, let me write that down, because I appreciate that you're nodding and I can see your reactions, because that makes me feel like we're connected here.
Yeah.
So Charnice, did you know that those purple lights, those street lights, is not actually Purple Pride? That is not a campaign by the Ravens to say, hey, we love purple lights.
Right.
Those are defective bulbs and street lamps. If you see them, you're supposed to report them, even though they're kind of cool. And look at Bernice, it's like, wow. So Bernice, thank you for reacting to that. Yeah, those lights are not designed to be purple. They're actually defective lamps, and you're encouraged to call and report them, and BGE should go out and replace them. If you report a light out, make sure that you follow up on it, because once again, lighting is your friend. Now, not to be hypocritical, I just realized last night that a street lamp was out in my neighborhood, and I have to call that in. Now, here's another cool thing that most people don't know. When you pay Baltimore County taxes, you get a lot of services that you don't know about. It's almost like your insurance company or your credit card company, where you get some bonuses. If you look in the upper right-hand picture, you see that those branches are obstructing that light or are covering them. Maybe in your neighborhood, you have one that's completely blocked. You can call the county, Baltimore County. There's actually a Baltimore County arborist. And if you let them know that there are trees that are on the common area, like on the side of the sidewalk. Now, the Baltimore County arborist will not come out onto somebody's private property and trim a tree back. But if it's on public property, they will come and trim the trees to allow the light to do its job. So that's something cool. When we're talking about that natural surveillance and the other stuff, maybe you don't want to remove your trees at all. Maybe you want to leave your trees and bushes on your property. There's a thing called elevation. And basically what elevating a plant or a bush means is that if you can trim a minimum of 3 feet from the bottom of the tree, like let's say you have a nice pine tree that's blocking, the ground level. What we recommend is a minimum of 6 feet. But if it's up against your house or something, if you can eliminate the 3 to 6 feet underneath it, especially along sidewalks and walkways, that will prevent somebody from hiding underneath it, because it'll be clear as day. It's like they're hiding in plain sight, so they wouldn't do it. And on Liberty Parkway in Dundalk, we had a whole street and it had these Leland cypress, big, huge, massive bushes. You couldn't get out of the passenger side of the car because these bushes were blocking the door from opening. But people would also tell me, when you guys were looking for that stolen bicycle the other day, the dude ran down the street. I lost him. I could not find him. He's like, he ditched his bike in that bush right there. I was like, made a phone call to the county arborist. I do have a beautiful before and after picture that I'm going to have to include in my next presentation to show you that. But so Bernice is asking, do they have the same services for Baltimore City residents with tree cutting on common properties? I can say they should, but I don't know what they have. But once again, these are all questions. These are great questions, and also something that you should investigate. The more active we are in our community, the more aware and alert we are, the less likely we are to become victims of crime. Once again, criminals love neglected areas. All right, let's move on to security and alarm system recommendations. Once again, I don't work for an alarm company. I don't work on commission, even though I sold Dr. Daniels a lot of security advice. She went and made some effective changes, and she feels safer, and that was the goal. So security alarms, 1, have them registered. A alarm system that doesn't report to anywhere is basically useless, right? So thank you for the notes, and I like your background, by the way. I believe that's an African violet, and I love them. But so with your security alarm systems, there are motion sensor ones, there are pressure sensor ones, there are all different types. There are contact ones. If you're going to do one of these internet home do-it-yourself things, make sure that your contacts are being placed correctly. A lot of times we'll get a lot of false alarms from homes, and we realize that the person had put the magnets in the wrong spot, so they actually never connect, and every time they arm their system, they're getting an open window alert or intruder alert, whatever. If you have motion sensors in your home, before you have them installed or anything like that, do you have a large pet that's going to trigger it? Is it set for a certain height? Did you do this? I'm going to tell you this, and you're going to be like, no way. Did you know that balloons are one of the #1 common causes for alarms at commercial and residential places? Because people will have a party and they'll put balloons up, and it will either obscure the motion sensor that's in the building, or the air conditioning come on, it makes the balloons move, and we get a motion alert inside a business. Next thing you know, we're crawling around, creeping around with our flashlights, trying to find a bad guy. We look up and we find the culprit. Balloons also, believe it or not, obscure video cameras. So if you have, we had this funny picture of a balloon and it was floating just at the right spot to block the lens of the camera. So we said balloon 1, security camera 0, because the balloon completely knocked out the whole purpose of that surveillance system. But yeah, so if you're looking into an alarm system, make sure it's something that's registered with Baltimore County. So that way, when it triggers, we know where to go. You'll always want to have a safe. You're going to need a passcode that if somebody else were to answer the phone and say, "Oh yeah, I'm Mrs. Jones," you know, and they'll say, "Okay, well, what's your password?" You have to have something that you're going to remember and all that jazz. You can keys with neighbors. Whenever you're traveling out of town, make sure you have a trusted neighbor that you can say, "Hey, I'm going to be out of town for a couple days or something like that. Can you keep an eye on my property? You know who's supposed to be here, who's not." Please do not post on social media while you're away. I know the beach pics, the dinner pics, and all the other stuff, your friends want to see them, but it's best to restrain yourself from posting pictures about being away from home, because you never know if a friend of a friend might have a brother or a cousin who's a crackhead and is looking for a vacant house, because we all see what's on each other's social media. Like I see things that my wife's friends of friends post when I should have no right seeing some of that stuff, but I do. Luckily, I'm a good guy and not somebody who's looking to break into their house, because they've told me that it is completely unmonitored, right? So best bet is when you go away on vacation, take all the pictures you want, save them up, create an awesome album, and then share them once you get back. Then would-be criminals will be like, "Damn, I missed my opportunity," right? Also be careful what you share. Schools coming back, schools reopening. Please, please, please do not say, "Little Johnny goes to ABC Elementary School in the 3rd grade, rides bus number 347. I'm so happy that it's his first day of school," because now any pedophile in your neighborhood knows your son or daughter's name. They know what they're wearing. They know what school they go to. "Oh, your aunt told me to pick you up at this time." You know, really? No. Share that. Now, if you want to take pictures for your own personal family, like you're going to text mom or auntie or whoever else, you can send them that and say, "Hey, listen, do me a favor, don't put this on social media." But if you want to show a picture of your grandchild or your own kid or somebody else that's going to school, take a moment and blur out the school and the grade, just so that it's not out there on public information. I hate to say this, but there is a sick world out there, and pedophiles love pictures of individual children by themselves because they do nefarious things with them. So just be cautious about what you put out there. This is the cyber safety portion of today's topic, okay? Just really be careful what you put out there. Do I have any questions yet? I know we're closing in on our time opening up for time for questions. The biggest thing that I really want to do for you is I want you to be aware and alert, but I don't want you to be hyper vigilant. I don't want you to fear that you're going to be a victim at any moment. I do want you to be aware of your surroundings. I'm going to reference my daughter right now. My daughter called me at 8 a.m. She was on her way to band practice at the University of Maryland this morning. And she said as she was leaving her neighborhood that there was a black van with 3 men in it that she could see, and they were following her very closely as she was leaving the neighborhood. And when she got in the left turn lane, they were in the right turn lane. And when she's like, "Okay, I'm finally losing these guys because they're just weirding me out. They're trying to look in my car." She made the left towards the campus, and all of a sudden these guys came from the right lane where it was a right turn only, and then started following her again. Now, could they have been lost? Quite possibly, yes. But was she aware enough of her surroundings to say something doesn't feel right? Not only did she get on the phone with me, which I'm going to talk to you about in a second, she got on the phone with me and she was able to describe the van. She was able to get a tag number, and she was able to tell me that it was a Chesapeake Bay tag, because in College Park, there is Virginia tags, DC tags, you know, tags from all over the country, really, because it's a college campus. And she was aware enough. Now, although I give her tons and tons of kudos, and I'm so proud of her for being aware and alert of her surroundings, She called me before she called 911. And I would much rather her have given that tag number to 911 and let the police know that she was in an uncomfortable situation first, and then notify me afterwards, because I'm in Harford County right now. And in a few minutes, I'm going to be heading over to an event in Baltimore County. So I wouldn't be able to help her immediately, but 911 can. The point of my message here is this. Too many citizens are too quick to call a family member or post something on social media before they call 911. Please, please, please do not think that you are bothering us. Do not think that your information is not important enough for us. If you see something that is making you feel uncomfortable, please call us. Fun fact about Baltimore County, for every one marked police car you see, we have 3 unmarked vehicles on the road. Now, those unmarked vehicles are not vehicles that you're going to look at and say, oh, that's a cop car. No, it's going to be mom's minivan. It's going to be a sports car. We have detectives all over the place. When something pops off, you would be amazed how fast different police will show up and be there, or we'll at least have eyes on them. We may not expose ourselves. Like, I drive an unmarked car every day. No lights, no sirens. I have a radio. And when I hear something come out, wherever I'm at, if I can put eyes on it and say, okay, I'm behind them. I got this. Send units this way, that way, whatever. So once again, to reiterate, if you're in a situation where you don't feel comfortable, you see something suspicious, potentially dangerous, you're not sure, just call it in. Let us know. We'll decide. Any officer that gets upset with you calling 911 during their tour of duty, we need to have a talk with them, right? We work for you. So we need you to feel safe and be safe. Let us help you out, okay? Don't hesitate. All right, so we covered social media. We covered being aware of your surroundings. We covered home security, safety, and assessments. One other bonus program Baltimore County has is called the Vacant House program. Let's say you live in a neighborhood, but you're not really super tight with your neighbors, but you need somebody to, or you would like somebody just to keep a random eye on your house here and there. We have a vacant house form that if you contact your local precinct, you give us your address, the dates you're going to be away, maybe the name of an emergency contact, and we will put you on a list, and the patrol car assigned to your area will actually drive by your house and conduct checks on your property while you're away. So it's a pretty cool option. And that way, if somebody is posing as a contractor or something else, we will know if they belong there or not. Okay. All right. So at this point, I am going to open the floor for questions. I want you to consider that you have a friend in law enforcement. You have a ton of us. You just need to reach out to us and meet us. Most people do not call us and say, hey, I'm having a great day. Will you come over? But if you have something good going on, or you have a question or something like that, I'm just going to go back one slide because I want to share with you my contact information. I do want to let you know I am not a unique officer, although I am extending my personal information and sharing information with you. If you create a dialogue with any of us, you should have an open relationship with any one of those of us that are here to serve you. My chain of command works like this. You may not know this, but the person I respond to above my chief is you. We work for the citizens. So if you have a question, a comment, a concern, reach out to us. If you ever have an encounter that is less than favorable, let one of our supervisors know. We do not tolerate lack of integrity. We do not tolerate rudeness. We are here to serve the public, protect and serve, okay? We may not serve burgers. On occasion, we do serve coffee because we do cops and coffee. But I do want to drop this information on you too. Do you see behind me, I have this symbol. It's called Public Safety Cadets. This is a new youth program that we have. We used to have the Police Explorer program in Baltimore County for ages 14 through 21. This is kind of like the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts version of law enforcement. We give young kids all around the county an opportunity to join our program and test run a career in law enforcement. And they also get an experience to see what it's like to experience serving your community and how good it feels to connect with people and help them out in their time of need, whether it be something simple like directing traffic or doing the crime assessments or whatever it is. It's a great program. We just got awesome new uniforms through the Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention. We won a grant, and you're going to see pictures coming out soon of our new uniforms. They look very sharp. They're gray on gray, and then they also have these cool black T-shirts with Public Safety Cadet on the back. They got polo shirts. These kids are going to look good. They're going to feel good. So we encourage you that if you have a family member, a community member, a kid who might need some guidance, or who's looking to do the right thing but doesn't know where to go, please send them to the Baltimore County Public Safety Cadet Program. And if you go on Baltimore County's general government website, or even Google, just type in Baltimore County Police Youth Programs. It'll give you the link to all of our information. And I'm really looking forward to pushing this program out. We just shared the pictures of the new uniforms internally with our agency yesterday. But if you're looking at the screen, it's a bright yellow screen. It has a thing that says questions with a big question mark. It also has my first and last name with my county email address and the general number to my office. I would give you my private line, but I want to make sure that if you have a question that's related to something, my unit, we cover domestic violence, we cover youth programs, we cover a whole bunch of stuff. I want you to be able to access anyone at any time, that if I'm away training somewhere, there's not a lag in information for you. So 410-887-5901 is our general office number. Please feel free to email me, call me on that number. If you call that general number, they'll put you in my direct mailbox. Maybe it's 2 weeks from now and you forgot something I said, or you have an issue and you're just curious about it. My unit works countywide. I'm not dedicated just to Towson or Essex. We go anywhere in the county for you. If you live in another jurisdiction, because I know I've had some questions about Baltimore City, if for some reason you contact your local jurisdiction and they don't have the services that we provide to you in Baltimore County, call me, text me, email me. I will find an answer or a connection within one of those agencies to get you what you need. Because like I said in my intro, that's what makes me happiest, is being able to help people connect with you, have a relationship with you, and make you and your family feel safe and secure. So any questions?
Thank you, Officer George. I do have a couple of questions, kind of group questions. The first of which is, do you suggest that we take a self-defense class?
Absolutely. I have an 11-year-old son. He's enrolled in Taekwondo. My daughter that's in college, she also did it. Find a form that interests you, a form of self-defense. But yes, self-defense, you can't go wrong. It's like learning CPR. It's a tool. You hope you never need it, but you should know it for yourself and for your family.
Okay. And the second question is, in lieu of our current state with the pandemic and other infectious diseases and just safety in general, how do we stay safe in a crowd?
Oh, great question. So we have a program called, well, this is twofold real quick, and I'll try and keep it as quick as possible, but I think it's incredibly a valuable question you just asked. Obviously, we can keep your social distance. I like to call a healthy distance, because a social distance, you're a little bit closer and you're being a little more socially interactive, right? But when you're in a crowd, please be mindful. You want to avoid being in dangerous places. If you're tripping over information about a location that is known for shooting, stabbings, and something else, and you don't have any direct business being there, try to avoid it. I know it's not going to be the Chamber of Commerce's favorite message for anyone to deliver, but be aware of your surroundings, know where you should be, where you shouldn't be. There is a program called Avoid, Deny, Defend. It is what I like to call the better version of Run, Hide, Fight. I present this topic all over the county. I would love to present it to your group as well, especially if we could do it in person. It's called Avoid, Deny, Defend. So whenever there is a threat, an active shooter situation, an active assailant, somebody with a knife, somebody driving a car through a crowd, any of these terrible things that do happen in society, we want you to be prepared to avoid the situation, deny the offender or the attacker an opportunity to get to you. You're going to deny them by avoiding them, running in the opposite direction, being aware of social and societal cues. If people are running, why are they running? Don't just walk into it, and please don't pick up your cell phone and say, well, I want to see why people are running, and try and go viral and go hands-on with a shooter or an attacker or anything like that. And you're going to deny them access to you. You're going to block doors. You're going to barricade them. You're going to lock things immediately. Do not allow them access to you. Shooters, I don't know if any of you have ever seen somebody go to the range. Most people that go to the range, they're standing still. They're shooting at a paper target that's not moving, and they still miss the target. Shooters are afraid. If you throw things at them, if you do anything to obstruct them or make them nervous, their shots aren't going to hit what they want to hit. So please don't be a willing victim of that. The last thing you're going to do is defend. You're never going to be a sitting duck. You're never going to be found hiding under a desk. You're never going to be found cowering. If you are going to offer resistance on every level and any level possible to you. So everybody remember, avoid, deny, defend. If you, the acronym that we use is a CRAZE presentation. It's CRASE. It's Civilian Response to Active Assailant Events. I'd be happy to line up a presentation for any of you, anywhere, anytime. But it's definitely great information that you can use at home, work, when you're shopping. And always know other exits out of any place you go. If you go to the grocery store and there's a shooting going on in the grocery store, everyone is going to run out the front door. Why? Because that's where they came in. I want you to think about, can I run through the produce department and get out through where they deliver the fruits and vegetables from? Can I go through the seafood department? If I'm at the mall, can I run through Bath and Body Works and get into the service hallway behind the store? Yeah, you can. In a moment where you need to save your life, you are getting creative and you're knowing your exits before you need them. Once again, I want you to be vigilant, not hyper vigilant. Don't be freaked out. And as far as being in crowds, I'm not a health professional, but if you don't feel comfortable being too close to somebody, don't be. And if you have, if you prefer to wear a mask, do your thing. And hand sanitizer. Officer Musini is a big fan of hand sanitizer.
Okay, and we have one more question to come through from a participant. So how effective are these neighborhood watch social sites such as Nextdoor at deterring crime? And do they encourage participation?
All right, so Nextdoor blows up my email. These are usually people that are retired, sitting at home, looking for something to identify. I will say this, they are very good at communicating neighborhood issues. Some can be very petty. That's fine. You know, when we respond to stuff, we'll let you know if it's a county code violation or whatever else. I do encourage, listen, signage is good. Just like I said in the presentation earlier, if you have a, like an alarm sign in front of your property. In my neighborhood, we have a neighborhood watch sign. It is bright as anything. It says, call the local sheriff for law enforcement. First thing everybody does, though, they go right to Facebook. There's the van in the neighborhood, or I see a guy walking down the street, or whatever. And, some people are going to take it seriously. Some people are going to be like, oh, okay, nervous Nelly, or whatever. But yes, I do think we have community associations that are very interactive. Nextdoor is another good program because it keeps people in the loop. But once again, if you see something that is worthy of our attention as law enforcement, please make sure you're including us in that and not just bantering back and forth and not identifying people that should be identified.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if there are no more questions at the moment, remember, you can reach out to me anytime. Dr. Daniels, I can't thank you enough, or if you prefer, Dr. Watties, Denyce, if I may. Thank you so much for this opportunity to work with your group. As you can tell, I love sharing what I know to help people. So any other opportunities or questions, please feel free. You have a friend in law enforcement. My name is George. My work job is a police officer, but here for all of you. And thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you.
All right. And now you got another. Well, I'm not going to say another fantastic, because I'm not going to say myself is fantastic. But Ashley's got some great information for you guys and girls. So I know I'm going to be following up with Ashley after today because I know the information she has, our department needs as well. So without any further ado, I'll pass it over and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm ready when y'all are. I didn't know if you wanted to read the bio or not.
Well, thank you so much for joining today's Personal Safety Forum. We would like for you to complete an evaluation form to provide feedback on the Personal Safety Program. The link will be posted in the chat, or you can take a picture of the QR code on your screen. Please complete this form by September 6th. We appreciate your response. This concludes our Personal Safety Forum. We hope that you enjoy the rest of your weekend.
All right, so I'm ready to go ahead and jump in. If we can get the slides up and get going. All right. So to give a little bit of background about myself, my name is Ashley Morris. I'm currently the Emergency Management Planner for Baltimore County Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. Our office is technically under the Baltimore County Fire Department, but our focus isn't actually responding to fires or doing medical calls. Our focus is actually doing disaster preparedness, response, and recovery for Baltimore County, for residents, for visitors, and for anybody that could be affected by different things like hurricanes, floods, active shooters, acts of terror, any kind of man-made and natural hazard disaster that we could have in this county. Our office takes care of getting the county ready for that, doing educational outreach like this, and then also springing into action when we actually have that. Next slide. So about me, I've been doing local level emergency management for about 5 years now. I actually started outside of Austin, did a little bit in Texas, and then spent some time with Fairfax County during the pandemic, working emergency management. And finally, I've been in Baltimore County for almost 2 years now. I currently, as an emergency management planner, work on emergency plans. So working with the police department, fire department, DPW, Public Works, all the different county agencies, and making sure that we're ready to take care of whatever storm or whatever disaster could come our way. It's really good and important for us to get in the room before the disaster to actually write a plan so that that way when we see the hurricane coming in or we see something coming, we can already know what agency is going to do what. Also, emergency management helps provide snow plows, resources, different things to our first responder friends who might need them while they're trying to go out there and save lives during the disaster. So we work very closely with them to identify what their needs might be during disaster response and then make sure that we have all of that. After we write plans, we typically do a lot of training and exercise. So we're actually doing drills, practicing those county plans, making sure we're ready, and we're also grading ourselves. So we're seeing whether or not our emergency plan is actually going to work. And if it doesn't work, then we make sure to change the plan, once again, before we have that disaster in Baltimore County, so we can make sure to save more lives. Some other roles that our office does, specifically to me, I do a lot of the Baltco alert system maintenance. So we have an emergency notification system we're going to be talking a little more about later. I do some of our social media outreach. So our office actually has a Facebook page, a Twitter page, and a Nextdoor page. So I'm going to share more info with that as well. And then also spend a lot of time doing community outreach and presentations because I really am passionate about getting people ready for severe weather and disasters. Next slide. All right, but to start the presentation, I always like giving a little bit of background about our office because I've learned as an emergency manager, a lot of the residents that I've worked with, whether or not in Baltimore County or in Texas or Virginia, actually aren't super familiar with emergency management. They don't always know that they have a disaster professional working for them, trying to get the county ready for that. We're kind of a hidden agency, especially since we're under the fire department. And then even during the disaster, we're a little hidden because we're actually in the Emergency Operations Center and we're doing all the behind the scenes coordination while police and fire and first response and public health is out in the field. So we're not always seen as much. Our office, we have a staff of 5 different people doing different things like GIS mapping, managing grants to purchase disaster supplies and things for the county. We actually have someone designated to work with police and fire to plan special events, making sure that we have safety processes for that, trying to keep people safe from different attacks at special events, things like that. Of course, we have me as a planner, and then we have my director who manages the office. We cover the entire county of Baltimore, so any kind of incident, disaster, weather-related damage that would occur in Baltimore County, we manage that. It's a very big county. And then, like I mentioned before, it really is our core duty to take care of any large emergency or disaster and really work closely with police, fire, dispatch, and assist in giving them things to do their jobs when it starts to get too much. Obviously, like a normal police call or a normal fire call, they do that every day. They don't need emergency management. But when we have a giant storm that goes through and then we have 100 different calls about rescues, or maybe we have trees and all this damage, it really requires emergency management to not only coordinate and organize one giant response, but also get them supplies and do different things that will help the community recover from that. And then one final reminder, disasters start and end local. So I know a lot of people on this call are probably familiar with FEMA, which we work very closely with. But technically, the way that our disaster law processes are is that it's our job as county emergency management to make sure that we're taking care of all of our residents. FEMA might be able to come in if we have a disaster that is large enough, but even if FEMA comes in, it's not FEMA's job to make the decisions. FEMA comes in and helps Baltimore County. So I always want to say that and kind of clarify, because I think a lot of people know about FEMA and they think that FEMA is going to come in and do everything, but really it's us. So that's why it's so important that we build this community relationship and everyone understands that we're the ones that are coordinating resources and different things people might need. Next slide. So what is emergency management? I kind of mentioned that a little bit before. Next slide. And basically, I like to call us disaster managers. Usually when we talk about emergency management, people think first response. Like I mentioned, we do not do any field work. A lot of our work is office related. And then even during the disaster, we're in our emergency operations center. We're holding briefings. We're working with the county executive. We're working with the police chief, the fire chief, and we're ordering supplies and doing a lot of stuff from our little command center to help the people that are out there rescuing people and doing the stuff as a part of the disaster. Obviously, disaster response is only one aspect of emergency management. Like I said before, we spend a lot of time doing emergency planning, creating disaster policy for the county, making disaster county checklists on what our county agencies need to make sure to be able to do during a disaster. Also, after the disaster, we lead recovery. So we are making sure that we're collecting the information required for the state and FEMA for any kind of residential aid that might be coming out. Also taking care of county property, making sure that we have an ability to get reimbursement to take care of damaged county infrastructure, county roads, county courthouses, all of those things. And then lastly, we also are trying to prevent or reduce disasters. So mitigation, we're trying to do projects to where we prevent flooding, prevent damage, prevent a terrorist attack, those kinds of things. Next slide. And preparedness, I mentioned a little bit about this already. So a lot of our preparedness is similar to what we ask the public to do, and we're going to get a little more into that later on. But preparedness is planning. So it's sitting down on a day like today where it's a nice day, we don't have a disaster, but we're thinking about what we would do if we had one. This is really important because we all know that when a big emergency happens or something really scary happens, it's hard for me to be calm and collected and try to decide tactfully what I'm going to do. So taking the time to plan before the disaster is really important, not only for me as an emergency manager, but also for you as a resident, because we can think clearly. We can make a plan that works. That way, when it works, we don't have to try to design the plan. We can just spring into action. Once we have that plan, it's important to do drills. So just like we do fire drills in schools, lockdowns, everything else, we're doing drills at the county level to test that plan. A plan might look absolutely perfect, even for your family plan, for getting out of your neighborhood, evacuating, getting out of your house for a fire. But until you actually practice it, you'll never know if it's actually going to work during that. And you don't want the first time that you practice it to be during the emergency, because if it doesn't work, you're in an emergency. So it's important that we do that. And then on top of that, building relationships. So like I said, we work closely with county agencies, but we also work closely with the American Red Cross, nonprofits. We're always trying to build close relationships with community groups such as this one, houses of worship, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, volunteer groups, anybody who could play a pivotal role in helping us with disaster response and recovery in the county. We're trying to do outreach with and connect with, because as we learned with COVID, it takes everybody to be able to respond and recover from a disaster that goes on in our community. Next slide. So an example of response. So we have that hurricane that comes in during hurricane season, or we have that flood. Emergency management is going to be doing the Emergency Operations Center activation, which if you can look in the screen, that's basically a picture of what an EOC looks like. We have one in the county that we will actually staff with computers and phones and big screens, and we'll call in all of our different representatives from the Red Cross and from police and fire and everybody. And we run that room as kind of the command center for managing that disaster. So in that room, we're trying to decide where we're going to open shelters, where we're going to evacuate, where we're going to put food and water for people, how we're getting information out to the public. We're organizing briefings, like with the county executive. When are we scheduling a briefing? What updates are we doing? So we're running the back end hidden stuff of the disaster, like I keep mentioning. We're also looking at the list, coordinating communication, which I touched on, sending out alerts on your cell phones. So if we have, like I said, evacuation or something that you need to know, sending that out. And then lastly, we do a lot of documentation, because it's important for us to be able to get that money back from FEMA, not only to provide aid for our residents, but also to get that money back for our first response. Next slide. Recovery. So that's kind of going to be the rebuilding process. So we're looking at rebuilding and healing. Part of that's going to be damage assessment. We help coordinate our damage assessment teams in the county, which are usually from first response, either police or fire or DPW. We help with some of the debris management, so trying to get debris off of county and public property. And we're going to get into this a little more, but keep in mind that county cannot remove debris off of private property. So we can't go on and remove storm debris from your yard, but what we can do is coordinate a pickup. So we can tell you to go put a certain amount of debris sorted at the curbside, and then we would coordinate getting rid of that. But we're going to get more into that later. We would also manage long-term housing, recovery funding, how we're rebuilding, and then documentation. Next slide. And then mitigation. So I touched on this. Mitigation is becoming even more important as we know that we're dealing with climate change and some different evolving threats like cyber attacks and things that if we can build and design things a certain way, we can actually prevent having those things. So an example of mitigation is like the flood wall that you'll see there, to where if that river starts to flood, it's not going to flood to the right of the river onto that property. As a county, we can actually also do land use restriction or zoning ordinances, making sure that we're trying to prevent building in very vulnerable flood areas. We can also clear land, like out there in the west where they're taking down a lot of the brush for wildfire prevention. Wildfire isn't really our biggest concern, but that is another example of mitigation. And our office has a hazard mitigation plan. We also help coordinate those projects with DPW with some of the flood concerns that we have, and we manage some of the grants. Next slide. All right, so our role during disasters. Next slide. So I kind of alluded to this, so we don't have to spend too much time, but as our county emergency management office works is our #1 priority is safety of residents. So when we're looking at threats or we're looking at activating the EOC for a storm or anything, we're trying to figure out who's at risk, what are the possible needs that the residents might have, what information and actions do we need to tell the residents and tell you, do you need to shelter from the tornado? Do you need to move away from the water line near the bay because we're going to have flooding? Do you need to take action and cover your pipes because we're going to have a freeze? Those things. So we spend a lot of time trying to get that information out on social media and also to the media about what our residents need to do to be safe. We also acquire resources, so we're purchasing food and water to distribute if that's a need. And then once again, we're closing areas. So we might be evacuating and closing that area until it's safe. We might be closing off an area or barricading an area, depending on the incident, like a gas leak or something like that, those kinds of things. Secondary is public property. So like I mentioned, we obviously assist FEMA and we assist in the process of trying to get as much aid for residents as possible. However, primarily we work to save public property. So since we work for the county, since a lot of our county infrastructure relies on providing water to you, utilities, roads, transportation, that is our #1 key, because if we can maintain that infrastructure, then people can continue driving to work, getting water out of their faucet, things like that. So that's our secondary focus. And we work closely to not only do property damage reduction there, but also rebuild that. And then lastly is continuity of services. So this is kind of similar to the public property, but it's also making sure that our county agencies continue their services required during the disaster and also after. A really good example of this is COVID, or even a cyber attack. But during COVID, so we had to shut down the county, but none of the county departments shut down their services to residents. Or if they modified them, they found out a way to make sure that people could still apply for housing permits and do those things, because the continuity of services through the government is important, right? We need transportation still, even in recovery. We need different things. So that's kind of our primary role when we're working on coordinating a lot of this stuff. Next slide. Now we're going to get into the family disaster planning, which is my favorite. So like I said, I spend a lot of time doing this stuff on the county side, but it's so important that we have residents and everybody else in the county working on their little piece of the pie of being as prepared as possible as you can. The reason is because when we have a disaster, we could have hundreds of people who need help. Like Hurricane Harvey, for example, or even some of the hurricanes we've had up here. We only have a limited amount of first responders who can go out and take a call at once. So knowing that, there's a big possibility during a disaster that you might not get help right away. Obviously, we're going to prioritize services. We're going to try to get people out there. We make plans to do the best we can, but that's why this is so important, because the more prepared you are with supplies or knowing where you need to go, the better chance you have of staying safe and dealing with a disaster. Now, how do we plan? So it's really important that families have different disaster plans, not only evacuation plans, but other things. And I'm going to go into that in the next slide. For planning needs, a really great website to go to is ready.gov. So it's a very easy website also to remember, but they have different things like different hazards. So they teach you what to do during tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, active shooter, anything you can think of. Ready.gov not only has different pages for it, they also have plan templates. So you can start your family plan and you can start working through where you're going to go, what you're going to do. Keep in mind that I'm sure many of you have heard of disaster preparedness, and I'm sure a lot of it is really overwhelming. We're asking you to make this plan, we're asking you to practice the plan, and then we're asking you to also go and get stuff. That can seem like a lot, especially since we're very busy nowadays. A lot of us are running families around, taking care of others, taking your kid to school, stuff like that. Keep in mind that you can still do preparedness step by step. So just do one step at a time. So maybe today you work on your communications plan and you write down 5 emergency numbers that you need. And then next weekend, you go and you buy a couple little emergency kit things, or you scavenge hunt and do that. It's okay to do it a little at a time, especially if you're busy. For us, we like to teach people that every little step you do matters. You don't have to be 100% prepared. Just start now. So we're going to go into our 2 key plans, communication and shelter and evacuation. So with communication, so this is going to be the concept of who you're going to call, how you're going to call, when you're going to call in the event of an emergency or disaster. So it's really important to have a digital log. So that can either be in your cell phone or on your computer, and also a paper log, because if something happens to your cell phone, maybe it gets wet or maybe it gets lost in the tornado, you still have that paper copy. And what we tell people to do with the paper log of your important cell phones is to put one in your emergency kit, put one in your car, like where your insurance is and stuff, so you have it in there, and then also put one in your wallet or some other place that you think that you would have a good chance of keeping that in the event that you lose your phone. Important phone numbers to consider for this plan is family. So any of your local family member numbers, state, anybody living in Maryland or the area, and then keep in mind out of state. You might need to contact your out of state family in a disaster. And keep in mind too that when we have disasters, usually everyone on the outside sees it on the news and they're desperately trying to check and make sure that you're okay. So it's important to have those numbers so you can get a hold of them when you can. Other numbers, medical, so your doctors, anybody that's important for your medical well-being that you need to get a hold of. Insurance, so your car insurance, your renter's insurance, your house insurance, any kind of insurance, including health insurance. You want to make sure to have those numbers in this log as well. Schools, childcare, your work, so maybe your boss, your supervisor, HR, or anybody you might need to get a hold of. Emergency response, so it's really important, obviously. 911 is easy to remember, but what about the police non-emergency line? What about BG&E? So making sure that we have the power outage number, because we know we've had a lot of storms of power outages this summer. Different emergency response numbers. That's very helpful to have because you might not have time to Google it in the middle. And then pet care. So I know a lot of us have dogs and cats and they have vets and things like that. Keeping your vet in there might be important in case your pet gets sick during the disaster or something like that. Now, and I'm not sure if this is on another slide, but a side note, keep in mind that when we have disasters, it's hard to get through with phones. We either lose phone service or everyone's trying to call at once and you're not going to get through. So keep in mind that it's best when you're going through a disaster and you're safe to text before you call. So text your family and let them know, hey, I'm safe, I'm at a shelter, I will get a hold of you when I can. Don't call, because once you call, it'll take down the system, and we're really trying to probably limit our phone system for those 911 calls because we're trying to get those for sure because those are life-threatening, right? Next slide. All right, so I did talk a little bit about that. So keep in mind your methods. So being able to contact people on their cell phone, text, like I said, call. Another method of communication for your plan is social media. Maybe the cell phones are down and you can't call or text, but maybe somehow you have data access, or maybe you have internet access somehow, or maybe you have a computer that's hooked up. You could use social media and apps to contact somebody as well. There are also some really cool communication apps that can be used offline for communication. really, really cool. There is one, and I can't remember the name of it. It's a walkie-talkie style app, and they actually used that during Hurricane Harvey to communicate when they were trying to get out of the flood and things like that. So that might be something to look into as well, because we know cell phones are not always going to hold up. Same with landlines. We also have landlines too on there. And then word of mouth. So in the event that all communication is lost during a disaster, sometimes the only method to get information out is just telling someone. And even us, we practice how we would respond and interact with responders if we didn't have radio communications or if we didn't have phones. Knowing that concept of where you're going to meet your family, how can you communicate with them if there's no communication? It's really important to just think about so you're prepared for that. Next slide. All right, so that covered your communication plan, which is one of the most important things, but sheltering is extremely important too, because that's going to be all about how you're going to stay safe during that incident. So we have two different shelter plans to do. We have a shelter in place plan and we have an evacuation plan. This slide, we're going to be covering the shelter in place, which many of you might be familiar kind of with COVID, with the stay-at-home thing. And while that's kind of similar, when we say shelter in place, usually we're more talking about like having a big gas release, like a hazmat, where maybe one of the facilities has a toxic gas outside of your house and you don't want to go out there. We're keeping you inside to stay safe. Another example of shelter in place is maybe there is a violent person in your neighborhood and police are trying to find them and they want you to lock your doors, turn off the lights, similar to kind of active shooter stuff, right? So shelter in place, the key thing in your plan is to make sure that as soon as you get that notice on the alert system or through the news that you're sheltering in place, you want to bring everybody inside, including your pets, and lock the doors, shut the doors. Obviously, if it's a hazmat, you don't have to lock the doors, but lock the doors is important for the security ones, like I said, with the dangerous person. If it's a hazmat or if it's smoke in the air or something like that, you're going to want to make sure that you turn off your air conditioning or turn off your heat. We don't want that air from the outside coming in because you're trying to stay away from it. We want you to make sure that you have that emergency management kit or that emergency supply kit somewhere in your shelter room. So in your home, you should have a closet or some place that is safe to stay in, like for tornadoes and things like that, that you can keep that kit in. It's best that that's the place that you're going to be, because that way you have your kit there or not. If it's not, because I know some of us live in small apartments and things like that, it's totally cool to put your kit under your bed, grab your kit, and then just you can go into your room or wherever you need to based on what's going on. If it's a hazmat, like once again with the gas or the toxic stuff, you want to cover your windows, cover your doors, cover your vents, and try to tape it up or cover it with plastic sheeting, okay? Sometimes people have used like trash bags and tape them, but really, once again, we're trying to seal and make sure the stuff doesn't come in, right? And then you want to stay there until you get an all clear. So you're going to be staying there until either the news says you're good, or we do, hopefully, on our alert system. We'll send out an alert that says, hey, it's an all clear. You're now safe to leave your home. All right, next slide. Evacuation planning. So the other one was staying inside. This is leaving. So in the event that you need to get out because we have flooding, or maybe we've got something pretty big on the horizon and we're trying to get people out of the way of it. It's really important for your neighborhood to know how many ways out do you have. Some neighborhoods, depending on where they live in the county, they have lots of different roads out, and they might even live close to, 695 or 95 or really big roadways. So they have a lot of lanes and a lot of room to get out. However, like on our eastern side of our county, by all of our waterways, we have a lot of different peninsulas and areas where there might only be one road out. That is a concern because if we try to evacuate 200 houses and we only have one road out, it's going to take a long time, right? Because we're going to have 100 plus cars or 200 cars or even more, because some families might have more than one car, right? So think about how many roads out you have to drive out of your neighborhood and closer, probably either inland or towards like West Virginia, right? And think about time. So it's important. If you only have one road out, you're going to want to leave right away when we put out the evacuation, right? Some people tend to wait. If I issue an evacuation now and the hurricane's coming tomorrow, some people might be like, well, I'll just leave like overnight or early tomorrow. Well, everyone is probably going to try to do that. So to beat that traffic, you want to leave as soon as possible. Also, floodplain and flood risk. It's important to know if you do live in an area that floods a lot, or even with the summer storms. If you know a lot of the streets that you use flood, keep that in mind for evacuation or for a big flood event, because you don't want to be trapped there to where you can't leave that road, right? So you might want to, once again, leave earlier, or come up with different alternate ways to get out. We want to make sure that you have your go bag ready to grab and take. With hurricanes, it's nice because usually we can forecast and understand that we have a long time to prepare for an evacuation. For other things, like if we did have a gas plant explosion, or if we did have something that requires evacuation but fast, we might not have time to grab all of this stuff. So we want to make sure that everybody keeps a little supply kit with your medicines, your contact information, clothes, all of your things you might need. Because another thing too, when you evacuate, we're going to secure that area and we're not going to let people back in until it's safe. So you might actually not be able to come back to your house for a week or two. And that's also if the disaster doesn't destroy your house. So it's important that when you get out, you take the bare minimum of what you need. And also think about important things to you too. A lot of stories of disasters about grabbing, their grandma's wedding pictures and things like that. It's always good to know where that stuff is so you can grab it. Obviously, we don't want anybody to risk their life searching for that stuff and then lose their life because they can't find it. You want to make sure that you always have your car filled with fuel, which is really important. You don't want to run out of fuel. As you can see in that picture, that is a hurricane evacuation down south, and I don't remember what hurricane it is, but you're on the roads for hours. And there's a potential, depending on, once again, how many people are evacuating, the timing, you could be in your car idling for 10 hours. So if I get in my car to leave and I only have a quarter, I'm probably going to run out of gas, and that's not going to be very good, right? So we want to try to fill up that car beforehand, or it's always good practice to always try to keep it full when it gets to that half tank. Already mentioned, evacuate when you're told. And then also knowing your school evacuation plan. So I did want to just clarify that Baltimore County does not create the school evacuation plans or any of the school safety stuff. They have their own school safety plans for active shooter and stuff, and they have their own emergency management. I always encourage residents to contact your school and ask them, hey, what plan do you have for active shooter? What plan do you have for hurricane? And they should be able to educate you and tell you what the plan is for if your child had to be evacuated. And then when you're doing plans, make sure you pick 4 locations. An out-of-state location you can go to, in-state Maryland location, a hotel, so maybe you have hotel points, or maybe you have a favorite hotel somewhere, and then also a government shelter. Now, we don't post ahead of time where we open shelters, but just keep in mind that we typically use schools, aging facilities, or county property, so park and rec facilities, those things. In the event that we open one, that we will put that out to the media and you'll be able to find that. But just have it in your plan as an option if one of the other options don't work. Next slide. Emergency kits. So ready.gov has an awesome starting list that you can actually go to and start to acquire some of those things. And keep in mind, like I said before, it can get very overwhelming. And I know online, if you search emergency kit, some people will try to tell you or try to sell you a $300 kit. You do not need $300 for this stuff. A lot of this stuff you can actually scavenge and you can just find. So pull up that list from ready.gov and look around your house first. You might be able to find a flashlight that you already have, or some Band-Aids, or some of your prescriptions, right? Start storing some of that stuff in that kit. You can also plan steps by steps over time. And then I know in Virginia, we actually had a tax-free week for emergency supplies. Maryland doesn't have that yet, but we might have it in the future. But it's always a good option to look for that. And then make sure with these supplies, you want to rotate them. We don't have disasters all the time in Baltimore County. So, you know, when you have snacks in there or batteries or any of those things you might use, you want to make sure to check them once a year and rotate them in and out. So replace the water with the new water and then use the water. Replace the snack with a new snack and then eat the snack. That way you're also not wasting the supplies, you're not throwing them away, but when we have that big disaster, you're not going to open your kit and then have a bunch of stale crackers. Next slide. Insurance. So this is extremely, extremely important. So unfortunately, the way that our current disaster program works in this country is that not everybody gets full aid. Not every storm that causes damage is going to get a check to replace everything. And even when we have a federal disaster where we meet a certain level of damage in the county, the state approves it, it's signed by the president, we get that, and FEMA comes, FEMA does not replace everything you lose. Most people only get a couple $1,000s from FEMA, even when you're approved. There are loan options. So like FEMA has different recovery loan options to where you could get a no interest loan so you can start to rebuild, but it's still a loan, so you have to pay it back. And then two, like I said before, it's pivotal and really important to make sure that we have insurance. Without insurance, you're not going to be able to recover and get all your stuff back. And that's something that it's really sad because I don't think we do a good enough job in emergency management of teaching people that. And so when they get wiped out, they expect that, and then they only get $4 grand from FEMA, right? So every year, it's so important, check your insurance once a year. See what your coverage is. Make sure that all of your household supplies, your furniture, all of your stuff that's important to you fits within that insurance coverage amount, because that amount is what they're going to give you for your belongings. If you replace all your furniture and you get all new stuff, you want to up your insurance, so that way if you lose everything in your house, your insurance is going to replace that for you. You don't have to worry about whether or not FEMA is going to be able to approve anything. You're covered. It's really important to have a belonging inventory for that insurance process. You want to make a list of your things, take pictures. I actually once a year for my little scavenger hunt, I go around and I take pictures of my room and different things for my kit. And then flood insurance. So if you have homeowners or renters insurance and we have a big flood or a hurricane, they will not cover anything. Flood has to be flood insurance, and it is separate. So if you have not purchased flood insurance and you have flooding, your insurance is not going to cover any of it. And this is a big issue that we have during hurricanes. So we want to make sure that you know if you live close to the floodplain, if you live close to water, if you know your neighborhood floods, you really need to get flood insurance because we continue to see more flooding in this county. Obviously, we're worried about more tropical storms and hurricanes, but we're worried too with climate change. We're having thunderstorms that are dropping 5 inches, 6 inches, 7 inches in the summer. We had a lot of flooding this past summer too, and in areas outside of the floodplain. So it's so important to check through that and really consider if you can afford it to do flood insurance. Next slide. Alert systems. So I know I'm kind of running out of time, so I'm going to wrap it up pretty quick. Alert systems are important because that's how we're going to be communicating with you during disaster. We're trying to tell you, when you need to leave, when you need to shelter in place, where we open the emergency shelter for you to come to. We can use iPods, our bulk co-alert system, which I'm going to talk about, social media, and then some other methods. Next slide. So I want to start with iPods, or wireless emergency alerts. So I know everybody on this presentation has received either one of those flood warnings or an Amber Alert that pops up on your phone, and it makes that really loud, obnoxious noise and vibrates. That is the national iPod system, and your Office of Emergency Management has access to use this system. So if we were going to do a big evacuation or we had a big disaster, I can use this federal system to send you an alert. And it's going to look just like that emergency alert on the screen. Everybody who has a cell phone that is up to date will get this. So if you're already getting Amber alerts, you're already getting those different alerts on your phone, you're going to get it. Make sure that you never ever go into your phone settings and turn off these alerts. I know it can be kind of annoying, like during COVID. I know we sent some of those alerts, and I know the state did. I know sometimes the weather alerts might be annoying, and the Amber alerts might be annoying too. But do not turn off that, because if we do have something important in the county, we have to make sure that you can get this alert. Because if you don't get this info, you're not going to be able to take shelter or do what you need to do, right? Next slide. Local systems. So the federal system with the cell phones is awesome, except we only use that for life-threatening disasters. So we're not going to use the iPod system too often. The local system, though, we use a lot more. And this is actually a brand new Baltimore County system that we started at the beginning of this year. We can send calls, texts, and emails to anybody who goes online and registers for Baltco Alert. And I'll make sure to put the link in the chat at the end of my presentation. So the way this works is when you go in, you register, you put your address, you put your cell phone. If we had something that went on, you know, evacuation, shelter in place, active shooter, whatever, we would go into the alert system, draw a box around the danger area, type the message to evacuate or shelter in place, hit send, and then if you chose call, you're going to get a call. If you chose text, you get a text. If you choose email, you get an email, or you can get all three. It is really important that you sign up for this system. So people who are not signed up are not going to get an alert. So I'm going to encourage everybody to go to the link that I share in the chat later and sign up. I will say if you have a landline, there is a high chance that we have your landline in the system already. We have an ability from dispatch to purchase those, and so we have that. But most people have cell phones now, and we have no way as a county to know your cell phone is attached to your home address unless you go in there and actually register. Next slide. Social media. So like I said, I encourage everyone to follow us on Facebook, Baltimore County Emergency Management. Follow us on Twitter, Baltco Emergency, and then follow us on Nextdoor, Baltco, or I think it's Baltimore County Emergency Management there as well. We share the same information on there. So we do outreach stuff and important stuff like this, but we also are always going to say, you know, we're evacuating, do this, here's an update, you know, report power outages to BG&E, those things. So it's another great way to stay plugged in to information about what's going on regarding the emergency or, you know, any updates we might have. We also encourage, too, folks to interact with us. So if something's going on, respond to us on social media. We monitor social media, and we're trying to collect that info. Next slide. Weather radio. Weather radio is a great way to get weather alerts, but I'm not going to go too much into that because I know that we're running short on time. Next slide. And then sirens. I do want to clarify something with the sirens. I know that I've had a lot of county residents on Facebook and Twitter sometimes say that we have tornado sirens in the county. So we actually do not. The sirens that you might hear are actually sirens that are associated with the volunteer fire stations. And they only go off when we have a fire call. Because back in the day, they used to notify firefighters to come to the station as a volunteer to go respond to the structure fire or the medical call. So while you hear that siren, it's only related to first response. It's not storm. So if we have a tornado, it's not going to go off. So I always like to clarify that to make sure that if you live in a neighborhood close to a station like that and you're waiting to hear that for the tornado, don't wait for that. As soon as you get the tornado warning, make sure you take shelter because it's all fire related. Next slide. And to wrap things up, just want to make sure that you guys have 3 methods to receive weather warnings. So we talked about Baltco Alert, which is one method. We talked about weather radio and some other ways. Have 3 because we never know what technology might fail in the disaster. Could be phone, could be internet, Could be anything. Next slide. And with that, I want to thank everybody. I hope that everyone learned something and took something away from today. And I really, really hope that everybody does one thing of preparedness today and then plans through the rest of the year to do more things. I did want to mention that September is National Preparedness Month. So FEMA and us and everybody who does disaster preparedness is really excited to start getting people more prepared. So think about that and start your preparedness journey. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ashley. Great presentation and a lot of good information. We just have one quick question for you. How do you feel about digital logs like on a Google Drive or cloud for family records?
I love it. I think that is super helpful, especially too, because if we open up a shelter or even if you evacuate or you go somewhere else, you should be able to access it with the internet. So that's a really great way to make sure that you have a backup. I would still encourage you just to print it. So that way too, if we lose all electronics somehow in the state, you would still have it just in case.
Thank you very much. So now I'm going to introduce our final speaker for today, Dr. Denyce Watties-Daniels. She's an associate professor at Coppin State University with over 25 years experience as a nurse educator. Her clinical experience include critical care, medical surgical nursing, fundamentals of nursing, pathophysiology, pharmacology, and technology informatics. She is a national conference speaker on the use of technology in the classroom and health-related issues, author of a monthly healthcare column in Grace and Glory magazine. Dr. Watties-Daniels.
Thank you, Derrick. I really appreciate your introduction. And Ashley, thank you so much because you hit on some of the ideas in my presentation. So I have a question for everyone that's participating. Do you have a first aid kit? Yes or no?
I currently have one in the home, but I probably should have one also in my car.
Yes, sir. All right, next slide, please. So we're going to talk a little bit about first aid, and it's just something basic. It's basic for you and your family, and you need to consider what you need in a family emergency kit. And Ashley did kind of go over some of these ideas that you need. And I want to tell you that making a first aid kit for you and your family is very simple. She is quite right. You probably already have some of the items at home already, and I'm going to show you what you need in your medicine cabinet and in your kit that's going to be very simple, but also very important for your family in case of an emergency. Next slide, please. So let's look at some of these items here. Here are all some of the items that you may need in your first aid kit. And again, a lot of these things you can even buy in the dollar store. Let's start here with gloves. Now, gloves have become something very important to all of us during COVID. Make sure you have several pairs of gloves. Again, you can get them in the dollar store. But I want to warn you, do not wear your gloves as though you are their skin to your hands and you're going out into the shopping center. I see people all the time with gloves on, going to the malls, going into the grocery store, and then they do this one thing. They take their gloved hand and they push up their eyeglasses. Now, I want to go screaming through the store saying, no, don't do that, because they're only a barrier to your actual hand, but you should not treat them like your hand. If you wouldn't want your dirty hand to go up on your eyeglasses, you might not want your dirty glove to go up on your eyeglasses also. Gloves are great to keep in the car. I keep a bag full of them in the car when I'm going to the gas station and I'm using that gas pump. Multiple people have been on that. So a couple pairs of gloves and a Ziploc bag in your car, but also in your medicine kit would be a great item to have. Next, let's think about Band-Aids. So all my young moms out there, you probably have Band-Aids in your house, but older adults may not, because you don't think, I never fall down, I don't need a Band-Aid. But then all of a sudden you get a cut on your hand and you really need to keep that cut covered. You need some good quality Band-Aids, and get some Band-Aids that are in in different sizes, because you never, ever know. The next is a roll of tape, because you might need to secure some gauze, and that's right under the picture, right underneath. So you need some gauze and you need some tape, because sometimes you may have a wound, an abrasion. You may have something that is a little bit larger than a Band-Aid. Unfortunately, you might have burnt yourself, and so you need to keep that covered. So you need some gauze and some tape. What about a pair of scissors? Have you ever tried to look for those scissors and you looked in almost every drawer of your house? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we need scissors. And we're talking about an emergency kit, a first aid kit. So let's pause for a minute and say, well, where am I going to put all this stuff in? Get a shoe box, one of those clear plastic shoe boxes from the dollar store. Yes, and put everything in it. It's mobile, as Ashley talked about. If we have a weather emergency, it's in plastic. It won't get wet. The things will stay dry inside. So make sure you get something to put all these items in. Preferably, again, a plastic shoebox will be great from the dollar store. Those scissors again. So I'm a person, I got scissors all over the house, right? I even have a pair in my car, keep a pair in my purse. I have, a small pair in my purse. I have some in my family room. I have them in the kitchen. I have them in the bathroom. Just get some scissors, because you have to cut that gauze. You may need to cut that tape. There are things you might need to keep. Our next picture, here we have some Benadryl, nice pink, something diphenhydramine, something that's for allergies. Sometimes you find yourself allergic to something and you need something to break that allergic reaction. Having some over-the-counter Benadryl. Now I'm going to pause you for a moment. You only need to take 1 or 2 tablets. That's it. This is not something to be taken over and over again. With major caution, Benadryl can make you sleepy. Okay, so again, on the outside of the package, it says, do not operate machinery until you know how this medication is going to affect you. But definitely have some Benadryl. I'm going to give you one quick story. I developed a seafood allergy, and it's not to all seafood. I think it's really the seasoning. I went to a major event not too long ago, and I was sitting there, and all of a sudden I felt a scratch on my neck, scratch on my forehead, scratch on my side, scratch on my arm. I'm trying to figure out, why am I itching? And then I finally felt the lump. I was breaking out in hives. Luckily, I was in a room full of nurses, and I looked at one of my colleagues across the table and said, I think I'm breaking out in hives. She reached down in her purse. She pulled out a Benadryl. She threw it across the table. I caught it. I took the Benadryl and immediately said, I have to go. Thank goodness she had some Benadryl in her purse. Underneath of this picture is also Benadryl cream. So when you have a mosquito bite, you have a rash that's starting to develop, you have some kind of, again, insect bite. I also sometimes break out, and when it's extremely hot outside, the heat and going out in the garden will make my elbows, right here in the middle of the bend of my elbows, I'm very heat sensitive there. Got to put a little Benadryl on top. Again, this is right over the counter. And again, I caution you, if you find that you have to use this medication more than once or twice a day for over 3 to 5 days, you need to seek medical attention. It may be something going on much more deeper than just a little rash. Our next picture that we see here, and I don't know if you can see my pointer, but right here, an ice pack. You need an ice pack. And guess what? You can easily make an ice pack. Get yourself a bag full of peas, frozen peas. and keep them in the freezer. And you might even take a black Sharpie marker and write across ice pack, so you won't make a mistake and eat them. Or after they defrost, put them back in the refrigerator and eat them, okay? But why frozen peas? First thing, the package is moldable. It will roll over an area that you might need to put some ice on. And how do you apply ice? 15 minutes on and 15 minutes off. And 15 minutes on and 15 minutes off. You do not leave the ice pack in place for over 15 minutes. Why? Because your skin will get adapted to it. Have you ever used ice or even heat and you thought it's not cold anymore, and you took it off and you put it on another part of your body and went, oh, it's cold, but I can't feel it on my original area, because your skin does adapt to it. So that's why you put it on 15 minutes on and 15 minutes off. What's next on our list? We have some peroxide and we have alcohol. And so we've understood how alcohol has become very popular right after the coronavirus. It cleans up and it helps to kill some organisms in our environment. You need alcohol, and you need it to be at least 70% isopropyl alcohol, not ethanol, but isopropyl alcohol. Now be careful, because we can keep this alcohol in our medicine cabinet and it will expire. So you always want to check your expiration dates. Do not use alcohol after the expiration date. It won't kill you, but it's not going to be effective in killing organisms. You can get the alcohol pads or you can get the bottle. And peroxide. Peroxide is very good in cleaning out a wound. It has some antimicrobial or principles. It will kill some minor bacteria in a wound. Much easier than using alcohol, because alcohol burns. Remember when you were little and your mom or your dad, grandma put alcohol in your wound and you thought your whole hand was going to burn off. You didn't want to tell anybody that you got a wound because of that burning alcohol. Well, peroxide is different. It bubbles, is effervescent. It bubbles and it does not harm. It does not burn like alcohol. We talked about the padding. You need next some pickups. You need some tweezers for those fine pieces of hair removal, or even you might have a splinter in your hand. And so when you take that out, we need some tweezers. Tweezers also help you to hold materials. Like if you were applying the gauze and you don't want to put your whole hand on it, you can use your tweezers to do that. You need a larger pad here. This is a combine pad. Sometimes we call it an ABD pad. It's a thick pad. It absorbs. So if you're having a bleeding incident, right? Or if you're having a wound that's weepy, that has a lot of fluid in it, you might want a combine pad. Next, definitely need an ACE wrap. Okay, again, you can get this from the dollar store, an ACE wrap. And this is to prevent swelling, right? If you have a sprain, and I hear people say, oh, my ankle swelled up. Well, that could definitely be a condition you definitely want to go back to your provider and identify and discuss. But if you have a sprain, definitely can put that that wrap on it, because it keeps the blood flowing upward and it decreases the amount of swelling that can occur in that area. Next is triple antibiotic ointment. So when we do have an open wound, the first thing we do is wash our area, right? Wash your hands. Wash that area with nice, warm, soapy water. Then you're going to apply your triple antibiotic ointment, and then you're going to cover it with a Band-Aid, or you're going to cover it with the gauze and wrap it with tape. We need some nice over-the-counter pain relieving medications. Advil, Tylenol, Motrin, these over-the-counter products that are good for minor aches and pains. Caution, caution, caution. I should have a red flag and wave. Red flag waving if you are diabetic, if you have long-term hypertension. Some of these medications may not be good for you. The ibuprofen, those things are not necessarily good for you. They can damage kidneys and they can raise your blood pressure. But talk to your provider. But Tylenol and Motrin are something you might want to have in your medicine kit for just some minor aches and your pains. Next, again, different kinds of bandages, because this is called cling, because it adheres, it clings to itself. And so it makes a nice wrap in an individual. Again, take all these things and put them in a shoebox, again, from the dollar store. And I liked what Ashley said. You need one in the car. You need one wherever your secure area is going to be in an emergency. You need it there. You don't want to have to run all over the house to try to find it at that crucial time. So have one maybe in the family room, or have one in the bathroom. Have one in your car, have one in the kitchen. These things are very simple. You don't necessarily, you can go on Amazon and they do sell already made kits, but you can get something very simple for you and your family without costing a lot. Next slide, please. So what are some other essential things that you need in your medicine cabinet at home? A no-touch thermometer. So we've seen a lot of those again during the coronavirus pandemic. A no-touch thermometer. It can be for the forehead. It could also be one for the ear. Definitely want to have one of those on hand, again, to assess if you're running a fever for you or your kids. An electronic blood pressure cuff is also something that you might want to take some time to invest in. The cost may be about $30 on Amazon, but guess what? You can easily go to the Giant, you can go to Walmart and go in the pharmacy area, and there's always a blood pressure machine right there that you can sit down, put your arm in, and assess your blood pressure. An O2 saturation monitor. It's a little monitor that goes on the tip of your finger that assesses the amount of oxygen, gives you an estimate of the amount of oxygen that is in your lungs as you breathe. Again, this is something we heard a lot about during the coronavirus epidemic that we had, or pandemic that we had. Number of people have started to buy them. They wear them around their neck. We've seen people that knew that this is something they need to have. If you already have a respiratory disorder, it's like COPD, emphysema, this might be something you already have. It gives you an estimate of how much oxygen you are really using in your lung. We want that value to be 95% and above on what we call room air, when you don't have any oxygen apparatus that you are using. So that might be something you want to invest in. Be sure to check the expiration dates of all your medicines. You know, we have some things in our medicine cabinets that have been there for a while. Again, I'm going to tell you a story. So my mother passed away several years ago, and when we were cleaning out her house, guess what I found? I found Mercurocone. Remember some of you may remember Mercurocone. This is now a hazardous product because it was really made out of mercury. Remember, it used to stain your hand. Oh my gosh, you can't even buy it anymore. I cannot imagine how long this Mercurocone has been in my mother's medicine cabinet. But what about you? What about those pills that your provider prescribed and you did not take the entire prescription? Everybody looks straight ahead like I'm not talking to you. But you know, you have been given an antibiotic and you were supposed to take it all 10 days and you started feeling better by day 7 and you kept the other pills because you felt, well, if I start feeling bad again, I'll take them again, or I'm going to save these for the next time. Shame, shame, shame. Everyone knows your name. No. Get rid of those old medicines. Do not keep them in your medicine cabinet. They can be harmful to you. Discard old medicines, and really you might need to call your pharmacist and find out what's the proper way of disposing your medicine. You don't want to immediately throw them down in the toilet. They can go into our general water circulation, and that's not good. Be careful about putting them in the trash can. If you have animals around in your neighborhood, they can easily get into them. It can be poisonous to them. Most often we will take medications and we can pack them in kitty litter and in a jar or something that is closed and not easily gotten into. Kitty litter masks the smell. And so your animals outside may not be able to smell it, and then they won't get into this hazardous substance in your trash can. Contact your pharmacy because they often have bring back days where you can bring back your old medications and the pharmacy will dispose of them for you. So that's always good to check. You need a flashlight. And I think I heard Ashley say that also, and also Officer George, he said it also, a flashlight. Because the lights can go out. You know, I'm going to tell you one thing I kind of discovered during all this. You know those coach lights you have outside? The ones that light up from the sun? Those are excellent to bring into your house also when the power goes out as well. They work on sunlight. You don't have to worry about batteries being recharged. And so you get some of those large ones, and I just like torches. You kind of carry them through the house. Be careful, ladies and gentlemen. You don't necessarily want to use candles. Candles can be extremely dangerous. An animal can knock it over and start a fire in your home. You can fall asleep and leave the candle burning. So be very cautious in using candles. We really recommend flashlights for your safety. Next slide. I think that's it. Yes. So I'm ready for any questions.
Well, Dr. Daniels, we do have one group question that I want to ask you. One of the questions came through is that I have arthritis. Which over-the-counter medicine is best for me? Which over-the-counter medicine is best for someone with arthritis?
So you really need to check with your provider, but Tylenol may be very good. Unfortunately, arthritis pain is due to a degeneration of the joint. The joint is really rubbing against, bone is rubbing against one another. And I just had somebody walk up to me just last Sunday at church and ask me that question about their joint pain. Unfortunately, it's not going to go completely away, which I know a lot of people want to have pain. They want to be pain-free. But when you're talking about arthritis pain, we want to reduce that pain, but it might not ever go away. And again, if you have hypertension along with it, you might not want to take Motrin. Motrin does work. Your ibuprofens do work very well for that. But again, with caution, you do not want to take more than the recommended amount per day. Usually those are 12-hour, 8 to 12-hour dosages, not every 4 hours.
Thank you, Dr. Daniels. I don't see any other questions in the chat. If anyone has a quick question they want to ask before I turn it over to Sister Bernice for the closing.
Okay, great. So once again, thank you for joining today's Personal Safety Forum. We would like for you to complete an evaluation form to provide feedback on the personal safety program. The link will be posted in the chat, or you can take a picture of the QR code on your screen. Please complete this form by September 6th. We appreciate your response. This concludes our personal safety program. We hope that you enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Great information. Really appreciate it as well.